Welcome to Leadership Rewired. Our mission is to disrupt traditional leadership development by fostering a community of resilient, growth-minded individuals who drive their own destinies and lead effectively through change without sacrificing their well-being. Two former colleagues and current friends, Allison Allen and Dean Martin, invite you to join them for an honest conversation that brings a personal perspective to the issues of leadership.
Welcome to Leadership Rewired. Two former colleagues and current friends, Allison Allen and Dean Martin, invite you to join them for an honest conversation that brings a personal perspective to the issues of leadership.
Hi, I'm Allison Allen. I'm an executive coach and strategic advisor. I'm also the co-founder of a small boutique organization called Destinies. I live in Southern Highlands in Nevada, which is just outside of Las Vegas, and I also split my time in New York.
Hello, I'm Dean Martin. I'm a leadership coach living in Brooklyn, New York. Originally from South Africa. I studied there. I then worked and lived in London for 14 years. And I've been in New York now for nearly 10. So here we are together. Our question to start us off is, what are we really here to do? So if you're a leader, and you find that sometimes you feel yourself getting caught between what your organization needs you to do, what your job is, and then what it feels like on the inside and what your passions are. If it feels like there's a tension there, then this is a conversation you might want to join us for and that you might enjoy.
Who are we? We will be clear in showing you who we are, what we care about, our mindset, our approach, and the skills that we can bring to you in the leadership development space. You can expect to hear and discuss and learn about things that CEOs and HR business partners and CPOs talk about, especially when they're making tough decisions about people and that decision lands on you as a leader, right? Through sort of honest dialogue and sharing real world insights, we want to have conversations about the real challenges of leadership, because today, how you are leading matters most to the people that you are leading, but also how you influence them and how you retain them. It used to matter before, but there were very traditional ways to support you. And today, we have to be a little bit agile. And that's what this podcast is about. What's the mission of Leadership Rewired? And we love the name, but we also expect you guys to tell us whether or not you think it makes sense or not.
We won't change it.
Because again, that's the part of the community. that's a part of the community piece. But we really want to disrupt traditional leadership development practices. We both, between us, Dean and I, have about 45 years of working in the leadership space and working with people, either in leading teams or leading big organizations, or quite frankly, developing and teaching leaders to lead. And we want to sort of bring that to you. We want to help growth-minded individuals who want to drive their own destinies lead effectively through change without sacrificing who they are. And we want to do that through technology and AI and, quite frankly, this podcast.
And all of those things, that's what we're going to have a look at now, Allison. I think each of those things that you just spoke about, wanting to disrupt, what is traditional leadership? What is a community? What does it mean to be resilient or growth-minded? Each of those things, said in one long sentence is like a hell of a mouthful. But actually we really thought long and hard that each of these elements are critical. That's actually what makes this mission important for us, that we see each of these components are distinctive and additive. So let's start. I think the first one was around the mission, saying that we want to disrupt traditional leadership development. What does it mean to disrupt? It sounds ever so messy and perhaps violent.
I think no one will be surprised that knows me that this is being sort of tossed to me first. I don't know. I think the notion of disrupt, and I think it's one of those words that I've started using thoughtfully, disrupt, because I think it's less scary. But I think disrupt for me is really about really sort of seeing something and seeing it not necessarily as a problem, but really as a challenge and looking for ways to make it better. And that disrupt doesn't have to be with the senior most leader. It could be with the person who's doing the job, right? So people come in every single day and they're filling out an Excel spreadsheet and they do this Excel spreadsheet and they actually know that there's a better way of doing it or not doing it at all, but they won't say anything. They won't do anything. They won't ask. They won't inquire because of leadership and what it feels like to them to see if they can disrupt or change something. And I think when you have that innate ability to do better, to see an opportunity in something, you need to figure out ways to feed that, because to quiet it means quieting a part of yourself. So disrupt is really about really figuring out, how do you be authentically yourself? How do you challenge norms that aren't necessarily working? And how do you sort of make things better and bring people with you? And if you're not in a space where that can be accepted, figuring out a way to disrupt your experience and move somewhere else.
Yeah.
So that's what it's really about. Noticing something and figuring out ways to make it better, not in the spirit of just being ridiculously provocative, but because it's really going to change how things are done and how things can be better.
And I think also, you know, we've called out disrupting traditional leadership. That doesn't necessarily mean that whatever you and I have known and grown to love about traditional leadership is wrong. It's been the foundation of our careers, and it's what we, you know and love. And there's good stuff out there. So sure, do it. Traditional leadership, 100%. And also, this is a space. So I heard you saying to folk, you know, here's a way we can maybe think about things differently. And I would add here, because you and I are no longer in corporate, we each have our own our own businesses. We now get to say that stuff.
Yes. That's 100%
we now get
true.
to say, oh, 100%. This is bullshit and this is good stuff and this is worth trying out. So that's what's exciting about the disruption piece. Yeah, we are unrestrained.
We're unrestrained, but think about how you've been. I mean, I think let's stick here for just 2 seconds. Think about our careers, mine and yours. And when we've been in places where people are like, but no, we need the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
In our own bodies, right? We knew that there was a better way. And, you know, sometimes it comes down to, you know, is this a hill to die on that's going to kill the very essence of myself? Or is this one of those ones where I really need to be like, okay, is this a place where I'm going to be successful? And all right, I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Disagree with that?
And that's also, I think my question for you is, how do we know the difference as leaders, people who are listening? How do you know, is this the hill I'm going to die on, or is this I need to think about a different role or a different job?
Mm-hmm. How do you figure that out?
It's a tricky, I mean, you spoke about the body. I think we feel it in our bodies. So there are probably leaders listening now who have like a migraine or have some kind of like stomach issue happening or whatever. And, you know, I'm not a medical doctor, but you can feel it in your body. And I think that's probably one of our first indications of like, I'm not well. This doesn't sit nicely even with my physiology, much less how I think about what I wanted to do as a leader, or how I feel about my team, or how I want to contribute. I don't feel great. I don't feel good physically. So maybe that's the first step. We've got lots of time to unpack that too, hey? Yeah.
I do want to come back to that, because I don't want to give the impression that we're telling people, well, if you're not happy, quit. That's not what we're ever saying. Right. Which I think brings us to the next one. Resilience.
So resilience, I remember a long time ago, probably about 15 years ago, I was working for a management consultancy, and there was a book called The Resilience Factor that I thought, I want to learn this. And I did such like a nerdy thing. I got the book and actually made notes of the entire book. I was new. I was onboarding. I probably wasn't given a lot of direction, but some of that early content there really has had a big impact on me. And I think that's why you and I, Allison, want to really focus on what it means for leaders to be resilient. And that doesn't mean you have to be able to endure punishment or mistreatment, or that there's some sort of accolade that you should be, receiving because you've like muscled your way through something that's dreadful. I think resilience is I hope, and I kind of see it as something that can be quite light. It means that we can be adaptive, that leaders can have a strong sense of their own strengths, a strong sense of things they want to try differently and do differently, and then can bounce back from adversity. And in a way, I want to add to that sentence, bounce back from adversity in a way that doesn't have a negative impact on their well-being. They can sustain that. So we can have ups and downs and whatever, but you end up prevailing in the long term if you average out those, the ups and downs. And that feels good to be able to be facing something as a leader and to say, this is terrible right now. Or wow, I've just achieved such a success as a leader. But I know we'll be able to, I know a way through here.
So, and just to add to the resilience point, which I think was so good, is, your resilience is also going to need to show up in just dealing with the multiple change that's coming at you with the organizations. There's so much change going on in organizations. So it's the resilience that you're pushing through just to get your work done. But it's also the resilience of all of we used to call it when we used to do leadership training, rain and politics that's happening within the organization that you just need to deal with. And so you have to figure out ways, and we're going to talk about that, to just keep emboldening yourself in that resilient space, because it's super important. Dean, you were going to talk about growth minded, which I love talking about, but I love the way you frame it. So go for it.
So when we say our conversation and the leaders who we're appealing to are growth minded, there may be some folk who are going to like drop off as a result of it. And they're like, no, not my bag. But the growth minded, or having a growth mindset, actually originates from some really pioneering work around mindsets that Dr. Carol Dweck has done from the University of Stanford, a professor of psychology, and where she was, investigating what motivates people, what are some of the factors that account for people's success, and really focused on their mindset or like a self-conception people have. And there are two spaces we can almost find ourselves in, and we can actually move between them. But the one that is growth minded is a belief that our intelligence and our skills and our talents can be developed. And if we move back towards another space, which is the fixed mindset, that's one of, well, it's fixed. I'm as smart as I'll ever be, and what I know is all that I'll ever know. And what's important about that for us, as we know, is that how we think about ourselves orients us and predisposes us towards certain behavior. So if you're a leader that says, yeah, sure, there's some stuff I don't know, I can get better at it, then these are the kind of conversations that will be interesting. And if you're thinking about, I'd love feedback because I know I can do something even better. I'm quite successful at something, but I have this growth mindset. Every opportunity and every bit of effort that I put in will yield some result. That's great. As opposed to those who are maybe risk averse or who are terrified by discovering, there's something I can't do. I don't want to look at that. I'll shut down. I'll protect myself. So growth minded, that's the kind of community we want. That's what you and I care deeply about. That's something that I want to model and continue to work very consciously at within myself. When do I find a moment that I think, I don't know that thing, or I feel out of my depth? Do I want to shut down? Or is my mindset one of, I don't know that yet? Let's lean in. What can I get from this?
I think the thing with growth minded is being okay that you have aspirations.
Nice. Yeah.
I think sometimes, or that you want to do better, or that you want to expand, or that you want more from a job or an experience. And I think often people assume that growth minded is really about money or titles. And for a lot of people, it is. But for a lot of people, it's about expansion and skills and getting better.
Yes. And that also appeals to your own aspirations. I don't know. I remember I mentioned this to you a couple of weeks ago, where I had a while ago, I had a manager who really misused the use of the phrase growth minded, because she was asking me to develop in something that was around project management or whatever, which I was just sort of like hopping my way through just enough. And she said, no, but Dean, let's send you on a course. Let's make you an expert. I was like, I'm 53. I'm never going to be an expert at this. I know myself. There are a lot of things I'll be great at. Let me just make this manageable. And she said, but you need to have a growth mindset. I thought, lady, I do not need a growth mindset for this one. So it is about like, what are our aspirations? Do we know ourselves as leaders enough to say, doesn't mean I have to do everything or get good at everything. It's not let's not weaponize this, that somebody seems reluctant and we say, well, why aren't you growth minded? Let's explore that rather.
100%. And no diss to our HR colleagues or our leaders. I think this is true for most industries or professions. But people get a buzzword and they have this interpretation in their head and they're like, oh, I don't see it in you. And it's a judgy thing. So we won't dive into that because no dig on our colleagues.
So,
driving our own destinies. Look, I think I love this one because I went from putting my destiny in the hands of an organization and felt good about that because I felt taken care of. And I probably did that past a point I should have, because, I was shocked by an experience, which we won't name companies on this organization, so if we slip and say it, we're going to cut it out. But anyway, but I lived in this world where I trusted organizations, trusted my leaders, and I felt good about pretty much every organization that I worked for to a certain point. And then I got dropped into a whole world of politics and games that I wasn't actually prepared to play. And so that's when I learned that, driving my own destiny has got to be super important. And I, quite frankly, didn't really have the skills and felt a little bit guilty doing that, which I had to work through that, right? Now, on the other side of it, I have a higher expectation of what I expect from organizations. There's it's not a lack of trust, but you don't get it right out of the gate. So once I accept the job, I don't trust you, right? It's just, we both have to build that. You hired me, so I've got to build some trust with you, and you've got to build some trust with me. And I think controlling my own destiny means making decisions about who I work for and when, the experiences I want to have, the way I want to live my life. And as long as I'm not hurting anyone and I'm contributing to the world and to any place that I'm working, that's actually good for both sides. So driving your own destiny is something I wish, really, honestly, kids can learn right out of the gate. That it's okay to challenge and to question and to be curious. And that not everyone's going to take care of you, and that's okay, right? Organizations, I was thinking about this morning, organizations are going to take care of organizations. They don't have to be sloppy and they don't have to be mean. But they're driving their own destination for the organization. So you have to figure out, how do you drive your destination within that organization and take care of yourself. You keep mentioning, and you've mentioned a couple times, and I love that you continue to bring it forefront because I care about it so much, well-being. And when you feel in charge, it feels way more comfortable than feeling that you can be disposed, or, that you're being overseen again for a promotion because someone doesn't think you're ready and you are. So that's what it means to me. I'm sorry, I'm just sort of rambling, but.
I love it. I don't think it's a ramble. I think it's spot on. I'm curious as to, in your experience, what causes some leaders to not want to drive their own destiny, or maybe somebody's even having a reaction to that now, going, I shouldn't have to do that. That sounds stupid.
Well, I think what causes leaders to not be in charge of their own destination is because there is this, you have very God, it's going to be bad, but it's like, I think we still have, very traditional people, especially the people in our generation, Gen X's, which is surprising because honestly, what are we? We grew up before the internet. We grew up, playing outside all day, right? And building our own fortresses, and not always getting the game that we wanted. Whereas kids now can just whine and they get whatever they want. But there's a lot of us that still want to join an organization, be there for 25, 30, 40 years. And it's shocking to me. We came through 1999 to 2000, right? Remember all the drama around that. We came through Enron and organizations like really laying off massive numbers of people, big fall down of organizations, Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, just crashing. So when you think about that, it's like, how can you put your entire chips and your entire professional career into an organization when the organization itself is run by a bunch of people that you may or may not be in with, right? I'm not saying you can't get to an organization and stay. Goodness knows, I joined McKinsey. I was there for almost 8 years. I was at Bloomberg for over 6 years. Most people I know still are at Bloomberg and been there forever. It's not to say that they don't have control of their destinies, but it's just, I think for me, it's about recognizing when I'm ready for more, seeking that out in the organization as best I can, which is what I've always done. And then if I can't get it, saying to myself, I have a choice. I can stay and wait, or I can move on. And when you move on, you're taking huge risk, but you're in charge of what's happening to you versus waiting for somebody to go, you know what?
Yes.
You look like you're ready now. And so I'm not dinging those people who believe in organizations. I'm not saying I don't believe in organizations. I'm just saying, don't believe so much that you're blindsided. If the last year and a half or last 2 years haven't taught us anything, it should teach us that organizations are going to make decisions to keep organizations around.
Yeah.
They're going to do whatever that takes. So you have to have some control and ownership of your own destiny. Remember, you and I used to, I'm rambling again, but remember this exercise we used to do, which was like, what's in your control? What can you influence? And what do it's out of your control. I do that exercise all the time.
That's
right. And so when you're growing an organization and you want to move up, it's like, okay, what's in my control? What can I actually influence? And then what's out of my control? The decision to move you up is probably out of your control, but the influence and the skill building, all in your control. And when you know you nailed those two and you're still not getting it, like you have to make a decision. So lots of rambling there, but
no, that's magic. Thank you. That's good. Yeah. I want you to continue here. The other part of our mission is around, so really speaking to leaders so that they can take their teams or organizations through change effectively, lead effectively through change. What's the big deal with that?
Oh, come on.
We picked it. We put it as our mission, Allison.
No, and it's so big though. It's going to come up in literally everything we talk about. Every time we have a podcast, we're going to talk about change. Leading effectively through change. This is literally about, I often quote a conversation I had with Mike Bloomberg when he came back to Bloomberg when we were there. And I don't want to use the exact phrase that he used because it had a big F word in it, and I'm not sure if we want to say that on these kinds of podcasts yet. But he was like, what the bleep is change management? Because we were having to go in front of him and literally explain the remits of all of our areas. You might remember when we had to do that. And it was like a fashion show. You were putting all of your fashion
Or
in
your
front
best
of the
fits.
buyers.
Yes,
And
yeah.
I was like, we work here. Can't we? We've been doing this since you came back, and now we can't do it anymore. Like, it was really weird. But anyway, I enjoyed it. But he said, what the bleep is change management? And I said, and I did think of something. This man is not going to accept some HR definition. He's not going to accept some technical definition. So I was like, getting managers and employees to communicate so they can get back to work. And he was like, okay, keep doing that. So I didn't go. And that's what leading effectively through change is.
I like those words.
Really communicating with your employees.
Yeah.
Ensuring that they understand or have the space so they can ask questions, so they understand. They don't have to understand the intricate details of everything. They just need to understand how it impacts them, the team, and the work that they're doing, so they can get back to work. And so when you think about the fullness of that, as a leader, you need to be thinking about all the things. This isn't about keeping secrets and being mysterious and, not being as transparent as you can be. But it's about giving people enough information, making sure they truly understand. So you can get back to work. And he loved that definition. I use it all the time.
I like it too. I think we need to change our mission statement there to doing that. And I want to add, firstly, you being able to pivot quickly like that and figure out what's the best way to communicate that is one of the reasons why I love you, because you're so good and quick at that. But secondly, I think this getting back to work piece, for me, I can still sometimes have a bit of a visceral reaction to it. I think about what is the beauty and the love that lies within the ability to do work that matters. So whether you are a software engineer or you're working in accounts receivable, or I don't mind what it is, getting back to work can still be a joy. Sure, the other end of it is so that we're productive, shareholders, blah, 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 profit. Great, do that stuff. But I think good. I do want to get back to work. That's how I get to build my relationships and become more integrated as a human and develop and grow. That feels amazing. Work is a way for me to do that. So that's how I think about, sure, get back to work, rather than come on, we've lost an hour of labor and people need to be productive and all that stuff. I know that's the game, but
I love that you're bringing in that piece. And this is why I think we're going to have such great conversations, because it's interesting. Your take from what I said was, let me just bring this in just in case people are ensuring that that's not what is being said. But actually, I am to some extent saying what you're saying, because my assumption on the other side of that very short statement is that people are in love with what they're doing. They're just disrupted right now. Some change just happened to them. And so they do want to get back to what makes them happy. They do want to get back to coding, if that's what they do, or facilitating, or building products, or they want to get back to it, but they're distracted. They don't feel, dare I say, psychologically safe. So what are you as a leader committed to doing to get them back to a place where they can get back to work? Because that's what they want to do. They don't want to be sitting here talking about the layoff that just happened, or the fact that we're no longer going to be in India, or we are going to be in India more. Like, they don't want to be talking about that. They just want you to just like explain yourself, or explain this thing that just happened, so they can get back to what they love doing, which is working, or what they hate doing because it pays the bills, and they just want to get back to work. I don't want to give you the impression I'm not where you are, because I know where you are. But
we also covered it from different angles, thank goodness. Because two of me, as I said, two Dean Martins on the podcast, nobody needs that.
Everybody needs that. I need that. That's why I'm so glad we're doing this. There's not a moment that I don't talk to you and I walk away going, that was good. That was good.
So, Allison, our last little piece of our full mission and why we're doing this and what we care about. And just to say, we're discussing this now so that I think it's helpful for us to be able to crystallize this and to articulate it. And then for folk who are considering listening and joining in on these conversations, just to get a flavor of how we are wanting, how we will interact and react with and to one another. Just to be quite clear, this is why we're doing this stuff. And if it's your bag, come along. Let's do this. Let's rewire leadership in the way we think about it. And if not, God bless you. There are a lot of other great things to be doing. We want people who want to be here, who are growth minded, who want to be resilient. The last piece of our mission is really about being able to do all of these things. So be resilient and lead people through change, communicate so they can get back to work without sacrificing their sense of well-being. Why did we add that?
Okay, so I'll take a shot at this one. I think the thing that I would say is I think COVID sort of brought organizations to a same place, right? But I also think it brought people to a same place. We were instantly told to go work from home. Some people loved that. Some people hated it. People were isolated. I think you had conversations on the news all about people passing. George Floyd happened at that time, and everybody, Breonna Taylor, so much was going on in the United States. It was a leveler. And what I mean by that is that it brought the world to this kind of consistent challenge that everybody was dealing with. And decisions were being made in government and all kinds of things. But I think what it also did was bring transparency to mental health and the need and important part organizations can play in well-being. And I think it did that unexpectedly. I think, when you think about diversity, we never have really had intersectionality around mental health. We kind of associated mental health, a lot of organizations did, to certain groups of people or even gender. And I think, in fact, what we realized is actually mental health shows up in everyone and in different ways. And so you have to be in organizations that understand that well-being is a key factor in your ability to get your job done, which is why I have such an issue with the remote work debate. I think there's some studies, and I'll have to dig them up, that actually says that during COVID, productivity and some organizations had some of their best years because, and it came down to the fact that people they half dressed and, or they could turn their screen off, or they could be with their kid and kiss their baby. They could save 2 hours on a commute. They could go out for walks at lunch. Like, they could just live their best life and be at work. And, I'll have to find it, but there was like this data that said that organizations had some of their most highly productive years. And so if you think about that, it's like, then what is this debate around pulling people in? But that's another podcast. But I think well-being came out of this as something we have to support people in. And you as a human being, if you felt really good in that situation and now you're being drawn back to something that you didn't feel really great in, that's a challenge to your well-being. And that creates, another moment in which you have to make a choice. So what about you? Sacrificing a sense of well-being?
Yeah, I think, when we started our conversation today, it was, I said, are you a leader? And do you feel as though sometimes you're caught between, you've experienced this tension between what your organization wants of you, what you paid to do, and your own inner world and your passions and your values. And that tension can be terribly upsetting. And it's something I know you've experienced. I've experienced. Most people at some point are like, I know I should do this, but I'm paid to do that. And that being able to sit in that place and be kind of okay with it and make sense of it. think that's what we want to talk about here in this podcast. How do I navigate that? It's not a binary. Well, doesn't make me happy, so I'm just going to leave. Or this is what the boss pays me to do, so I'll just shut up and do it. How do we navigate that tension? There's great excitement and opportunity and growth to be had in that space. But also that our subjective sense of well-being, my happiness, my sense of me, what does it feel like to be me when I'm spending all this time at work? That could and should and can be glorious. It can be beautiful.
100%.
Even in a job that you may think is disgusting and you hate it, or you're leading in an organization that you don't really care deeply about their vision or whatever. Wherever we're working, I think there is that possibility. I don't think that's naive. I cling to that. I believe that for any leader, there's joy to be had. And I think it's really a sense of being able to return to who are we? Do we know ourselves? And then how can we show up in that loving, authentic way as a leader, regardless of what's going on around you? What can be done? Drive your own destiny. Where do I have influence? Be resilient. How do I not let this beat me down and suck the joy out of my life? You and I know so many people, friends of ours. I've got one guy I'm thinking of in particular, got a very big job, big job. And every time I see him, he just looks broken. And he's getting paid a shit ton of money. And he's actually very successful at it. This is not a unique story. But he's exhausted and tired and he's down. And I'm like, buddy, my heart is breaking for you. I'm not expecting you to necessarily jump out of bed with, joy and giggles and laughter. But that doesn't feel nice. We pay a price for that within our bodies. So,
well, I think we have to come to that in a podcast, because I think that person could be your successful person. That could also be a new team leader of a team. That could be someone who just joined an organization, right? I do think we need to give people something. I don't think it has to be now, but we should definitely talk about that. Because I think it'd be super helpful.
So our mission to disrupt traditional leadership development by fostering a community of resilient, growth-minded individuals who drive their own destinies and lead effectively through change without sacrificing their sense of well-being. If you've enjoyed this, I would ask that you please subscribe, share this with your friends, reach out to either Allison or myself if you'd like to work with either of us. And if you'd like to learn more about what we can do for you and your organization, the links to contact us are in the bio of our podcast. Allison, my last question for you. That's not bad. It won't hurt too much. If you think,
no, I know we're partners on this.
If you think about rewiring leadership, what is your personal and honest truth about that?
Leadership in and of itself has a ton of agility in it and needs to have it. And I think we tend to think about leadership as a linear path. And I think we need to think about leadership as this holistic, constant sort of skill building exercise. And so Rewired for me, personal truth would be recognizing that, experiences are going to come at you and you need to have what you need in the moment. And you may not necessarily have the time to sign up for a class or meet with your coach. So what can you do to build in your human ecosystem the agility to get to a place where you can self-lead and then grasp onto what you need to help you push through something that's going on? And Rewired for me is not being dependent on something outside of myself, but being able to come to something that's within myself or lean on the resources that work for me to get me what I need. That's what Rewired is.
That's rich. Thank you. That's beautiful.
What about you?
Oh,
you have to answer that as well.
My personal and honest truth about rewired leadership is that it's a privilege. It's a privilege to be a leader. And it is possible to love what you do.
I wonder how many people are listening who will say, privilege. This was forced on me. I want to engineer. And there will be a podcast about that as well. Because not everybody should lead.
Not everybody should.
But I love what you just said. I love what you said. If you are in that seat, it's a privilege. And so, yeah, I love it.